Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the JS Mindset Weekly Call. My name's Dennis. Today is Saturday, August 15th, 2020, and on the call today we have Bill Holter, Dave, and of course Jim Sinclair. On the farm this week, it seemed like anything that could go wrong did go wrong. Things that seemed even remotely possible, that they were impossible to happen, they just kept happening. And yet, one by one, we got them corrected and resolved, and we're almost back to normal. Things are returning to normal here, but I needed that life lesson this week. Last week, we all saw gold get pushed down hard, just as it has been hammered in the past. And just for a moment, I thought we were going to return to the old normal in the precious metals markets. But that's not what's happening. And I'm encouraged that the old normal, the manipulated precious metals markets, that old normal I don't believe is ever coming back. And the manipulators best get ready for a new normal. I'm not sure what the new normal will be in the metals, but I'm pretty sure the game is up for those that break the laws with their, overt manipulation. And all of this is taking place in an America where nothing seems normal anymore. Everybody's looking desperately for an equilibrium that we can all call normal again. There can be nobody in America that's feeling comfortable with things, unless, of course, they're sociopaths, and there appear to be plenty of them in the costumes of politicians and journalists. You know, I love Saturday afternoons. It is a normal for me because it's a time when I can not only get answers to some questions that are bugging me, I get some wonderful perspectives from three guys that I really refresh and appreciate because of their straightforward talk. Before we get to their questions or to my questions for them, please be aware that in our conversations today with the boys, it's pretty important to remember that we're not giving anybody investment advice. What we are trying to do is share with you our own personal perspectives of the economic world. As always, you can choose to add it to your own perspective or you can choose to ignore it. In the end, we want you to be prepared for what certainly is proving up to be some very trying times. So, Jim, gold got its correction this week, and I was relieved. It had gone up with very little volatility, and some of the weak hands owning gold had to be flushed out. It looked to me like there were cascading margin calls, and then suddenly gold is way, way down. Of course, I didn't like that, but I figured it was pretty healthy because we're in the midst of an inflationary period of time. Jim, any thoughts as to how this will play out throughout the rest of this year?
Well, one of the things we've been talking about is a sign of the extreme change in the character and even further, most non-traditional reasons for the why of gold's appreciation requires an increase in volatility to a point never yet experienced. Simply put, you haven't seen anything yet. $400 one day in gold, no problem, and that's before 5,000. After that, I wouldn't even want to speculate. I've never considered, and I've said many times that the decline from 1918 down to 1058 was not a bear market in gold, but the first serious correction in a huge long-term bull market. That when it reaches the levels that this market intends, it's not coming down from those levels. Reset is the subject now of almost all conversations long-term on currency. The belief now that we'll go down in history like the plateau of prosperity of the 1930s did is now new monetary science, new monetary theory. And there is no such thing. It's like saying the new law of nature, or waterfalls are now going up, not down. Stick to the rules. It's exactly what will happen. It was changed by MOPE during a period of enormous psychops of a worldwide intention to globalize that involved all media everywhere, and many, if not all, heads of state in what is called the free world and plenty in the, I guess, unfree world. So the big event this week that should give you, and does give me, encouragement, is the nature of the snapback from the decline, and a very interesting transaction where one of our leading investors in the world, Berkshire, shifted from Wells Fargo to Barrick, shifted from a bank, paper money, to a supposed to the largest gold miner in the world, and therefore in many people's minds, harder physical gold. Although Barrick does sell every ounce they mine faster than they mine it, but that's a transaction that is going to get noticed, and it's a transaction that's going to have a lot of people saying why. To have a respected paper investor move into, in fact, his move was into gold and groceries. It was kind of interesting. And out of banking is the tell-all. It's like it's the tell. And that's what Bill has been telling us. What Bill has said is this is a period in which we've created more debt than capital that exists. There is more owed than there is. And nobody ever thinks about that, but that is a fact. And it can never be repaid, and that is a fact. And it's not going to stop no matter who's in Washington, and that is a fact. And the closer we get to the election, the more money that both parties are going to try and throw at the voters, and that is a fact. And gold is going above 5,000, way above it, and that is a fact. This week was a phenomenal week in which gold proved itself.
Bill, it's you and I had talked about Warren Buffett, and let's go ahead and, if the listeners have not yet heard about it, why don't you fill us in on what Buffett did, Bill?
Well, Berkshire came out with their quarterly filing of their positions, and I think, and I hadn't heard Wells Fargo, Jim, but I think they got rid of their entire position in Goldman and shaved back part of their position in J.P. Morgan.
I saw Wells and
did you? Okay.
As part of that, you are correct in what you say, but it just Wells was put in print.
But the idea is he stepped up in 2008 during the great financial crisis and put all kinds of capital into banks, insurance companies, brokers, and I'm sure he did that with all kinds of guarantees from both the Fed and the Treasury as to guaranteeing him no loss. So for him at this point now to be moving from the banks and into the largest miner in the world, that's got to tell you something. And I think this week we've seen the gold shares have acted poorly across the board in relation to the metal. I mean, they've just not been, we've not had the rally in the miners that you would expect with a $500, $600 move in gold. But I think that's about to change, and I think this week you're going to see a lot of people piggybacking on what Warren Buffett just did. It's truly, truly a watershed event.
You know that in the break in 08 and 09 at the bottom, that guy bought a $10 billion derivative on the equity indexes?
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I did. I remember this.
$10 billion derivative. The guy, there gets a time where you got to be tight. All you're doing is make all the money in the world. Nobody's got any left. Then take it, put it in gold. That's what's just happened. It's a signal of how he's thinking. This is more dynamic than I think most people are willing to give it credit for being. Well, I am. Bill is. We are. But it's in the halls of the elite, the thinking has changed. This will have an impact.
Well, I think the elite understand that it's paper game over. And it's interesting, the upcoming Davos summit, I think it's in January or February, it's titled with the word reset in it. I didn't even know that. I just found that out last night. I hadn't seen it.
How many years ago did we start with that, Bill? Okay.
5 years ago. And that was part of my conversation last night with a friend. We were considered wackos, and what's the word reset? You people are idiots. And now you've got mainstream. I mean, you see the word reset on your screen on CNBC. Well, I know you don't, Dave, but...
He's got a sneaky TV hidden.
But in any case, reset it's absolutely real.
It is, and the first one is not going to work because it's going to be made up of the type of thinking that is Yale, Skull and Bones, the Jekyll Island type thinking.
Right. So, it'll be set to help and benefit the ones who write the reset.
Exactly, themselves. And it's, we are where we differ now, I think, Bill, is that we expect this to although be ungodly painful, to maybe give us a basis for long-term growth again. At least that's what I feel. Build a new system, a system that works, one based on gold.
Well, there definitely has to be some serious pain in order to bring forth a reset.
I don't think the word pain even comes near what it's going to be. For people who have no preparation, who don't expect it, who emotionally won't be able to take it.
David, I've
Denny,
been working on... Yeah,
Denny,
go ahead,
before
David.
we go forward, I'd just like to touch on one thing, going back to what you said about the correction occurring. And one thing, especially in silver, I didn't follow it so much in gold. But in that smackdown of silver, we saw 2 years' worth of production of silver sold. Mathematically, that's impossible. That tells me that it was not a normal, healthy correction. It was somebody driving a bulldozer through the middle of the market. Because think about what we're talking about. Inside of 1 to 2 days, 1 day technically, 2 times the world's annual silver production was sold. 1, that's not physically possible. 2, the fact that you didn't hear it, that there was nobody questioned it, the fact that there's nobody jumping up and down screaming, we're going to look into this, tells you it was an inside job, in my humble opinion. So I just wanted to add that in there because I don't want the listeners to think, because whenever I would hear things, well, it was time for a correction. Time for a correction and time for driving a bulldozer through the middle of the mall they're 2 different scenarios. And as Bill could tell you, 2 years worth of production sold in a day. How is that even possible? Bill, can you just...
Yeah,
hang on
there's
just
one
a second.
other...
Yeah, Bill, hold on just a second, because I was going to ask you this later. I'm going to go ahead and ask you now. In this recent sell-off in both gold and silver, it appeared to me that the shorts covered only about 25% of some pretty staggering losses that had run up in the last several weeks. That still leaves them still short of about 75% of their position, maybe as much as 10 to 14 billion in losses. So what happens from here, Bill? Bill, how can they cover those shorts without driving the market to the moon?
Well, right now you're talking about paper losses.
Yes,
they're real losses, but the paper can be created and given to the losers through the back door, so that they don't go upside down, insolvent, bankrupt, whatever. Dave, we're talking about the physical aspect of it. There's one more question to ask. Who, in a normal market, who in their right mind would sell in the fashion that they sold?
None. It's just, again...
In other words, a seller a real seller who's long the metal would never sell in that fashion because they want to get the best price they can. They want to sneak out of the room without anybody knowing they left. And in this instance and many other instances, I mean, time after time after time, the waterfalls of the past, they come in and they blow out billions in 5 minutes time, market orders, and what they just did and what they've done in the past is they try to create a lower price. I mean, they don't care what price they're selling it at. Their hope is that the lower the price they sell at, the better.
Well, again,
because they're trying to paint the market. Exactly, Dave.
Yeah, this was not like gee, silver was due for a correction. Well, first off, technically no, because it's still 72-1 on a gold. And
right.
It's 72-1. That's so still extreme that, I would not be surprised to see a 10-1 before this is all over. But that not being said, I just didn't want the listeners to go away thinking that, in my opinion, that I thought this was a healthy due correction, especially in silver, because you couldn't have that kind of selling in a real market. If COMEX was not CRYMEX, you couldn't have that take place because somebody would step up and say, whoa, you're selling like 2 years worth of production. That's a crime because you're selling something you don't have. Correct.
Yes.
So, again, I just wanted to add that in there for a perspective as far as, that was a smash. That was a smash and grab. That was like a riot robbery. Grab.
It was Dave, it was a created correction.
Correct.
And to Jim's point, the snapback, listeners, think back, and Dave, let's go back to the year, 2000, 2001, 2, 3, 4. When they would smash gold and they would smash silver, it would take 2 months, 3 months. I mean,
5 months.
It was gut-wrenching at the time because once they smashed it, you knew that the metals were going to be in the crapper for an extended period of time.
Exactly.
And to see what happened this week, we still have $26 silver.
Bingo. And we still have 1950 gold.
Right.
Another viewpoint
right, above the old highs.
Remember, most people look at the selling in shares or gold or silver. And another comment that there is for every transaction is a buyer, and not all shorts are geniuses to cover. So there are some very significant dedicated long positions that step into just such an event. And the key to that is it turns on a dime and runs right back up again. That means the seller went into a stone wall at 200 miles an hour and didn't expect to be there.
David, I've been working on some research. Let's talk about a different type of conspiracy. And the situation that's most likely soon to be called a conspiracy is that everybody is in shock that the stock market keeps going up. I got a note from my brother asking for an explanation. He says, I don't get it. In spite of everything that I feel and see, the market's going up. Dave, central banks are buying stocks, and they're buying lots of stocks. Nobody's complaining because, as far as they're concerned, their portfolios are going up, whether it's their IRA, their 401k. Everything's going up in value. So, Dave, here's the question. If the central banks begin to own substantial shares in publicly traded companies, can they not, as stockholders, influence or even demand that the companies follow orders, whether it's government orders, politician orders? Dave, we got something set up here that I don't think anybody saw, and that we've all been lured into the tent. What do you think?
Oh, I think you're exactly spot on. There is no company that does not clearly understand they're only in business at the behest of the rulers. Whoever the rulers are, that's the end of the story. That's a period. You couldn't exist as a company if they didn't want you to. There's so many alphabet agencies, and let's just use the NRA as an example. When they wanted to punish the NRA, what did they do? We spent years having the IRS attack them. I mean, the NSA knows so much about everybody. You have guys like Epstein who have run information operations on God knows how many businessmen and politicians. They have so much dirt on every single business, every single person, that, let's just say you're sitting in your office one day, Denny, and you're a big successful company, and you think you're a big shot, let's say like Oracle Software, just to make up a name. And the four guys in dark suits and sunglasses come in and sit down and say, we're here from the government, and here's the rules to this game. What are you going to do? I mean, you're going to do what you have to do to stay in business. And a good example, and people would say, what are you talking about? Well, look into a story about Promise Software. Promise Software was a small company. The United States went in and essentially absconded with their software. The Promise story is one that's been, it's been out there forever. The facts are clearly there. Some things people could easily look up. And then you have companies like, now we have our tech companies. Oh, they all went before Congress in the past 2 months. How did that work out? We got, where they're going to come down on all this, all these companies. Nothing's changed. Nothing's going to change because those companies are part of our system. The same way just before Facebook became public and went and served the purpose, DARPA had the program LifeLock, which essentially was Facebook. All these companies exist because they are intertwined with our government. And this is right out of Edward Bernays' playbook. The congressmen and senators in our country are lobbied. When I say lobbied, in my old terms, I would say they were bribed. If you show up in a suit and tie, or you show up and you have envelopes full of money that you're giving politicians, technically in my book, that's a bribe. We've changed the name to lobbyists so we could make believe that it's not a bribe. But I'm buying your vote in one way, shape, or form. I don't care whether I'm Monsanto. I don't care whether I'm Johnson & Johnson. Well, all we're doing is we are allowing our giant mega corporations to create trillions of dollars in fake stock wealth as long as they're willing to give a portion of it back to our politicians in the form of, bribes. Lobbying. Call it what you want. You're passing money. And nobody's giving away their money because they want you as a congressman or a senator to vote against their best interests, are they?
Oh, hell no.
So then that's a bribe.
Hey, Dave, think about the front running with the information that DARPA, NSA, et cetera, are able to harvest.
Exactly. Well, let's just jump back to your Warren Buffett story. As you said, Bill, Warren Buffett didn't jump in and buy Goldman Sachs in the 2008 crash because he thought it was a great deal, because the Treasury and the Federal Reserve obviously said, look, here's what we need to do. You're going to stand up here like the grandfather of the grandfathers and spew some nonsense wisdom. We'll guarantee your position. You can't lose a nickel. We just need you to do this. And we're going to make you a couple $2 billion along the way with this cooked-up 10% deal or whatever you want to call it that we are now peddling. And isn't that exactly what happened? So to say that that's not happening now, as you guys are talking about, obviously he's now walking away from his, not completely walking away, but he is significantly reducing his position in paper. And that's all we know as of now. We have no idea in 6 months what he's going to say he did with all those bank stocks. But just the fact that he's coming out and saying that he is backing with his money a gold mining company that basically mines pet rocks that sit on a shelf, someplace in Africa and don't do anything. So, Denny, I am absolutely of the mind that any size company or any company of any influence in this country only exists at the loving care of the United States government, because guaranteed, if you cross them, there's so many agencies that will end your existence. I think people's heads would spin if they had a clue how the game really got played.
I just think it's so interesting, Dave, how they basically printed the money, and this could be said for the Swiss, for anybody who was buying the stock market. They're basically inflating the dollars, using fake dollars, acquiring the business, and taking it over. It is conspiratorial, I know, to even say this, but man, that's quite a ruse. Keep everybody happy as they see their stocks and their bonds and their portfolios go up. At the same time, you're stealing their companies, and it's going to end up in fascism at best.
How about a centralization rather than nationalization?
I'm sorry, Jim, say it again.
How about a title, centralization, a new form of nationalization?
Exactly. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Communist Central Party or what. Go ahead, Bill.
To answer the question that your brother had for you regarding the stock market.
Bill, you're fading out on us. There we go. That's better.
All right. To answer your brother's question, I would just say look up the word hyperinflation. And in every hyperinflation ever, at the very, very beginning, things looked good. Because asset prices start to move higher, but people don't really fully understand that their currency, the value of the currency is being chopped down. And to add to the part about central banks are buying stock, think about that. That means that the stock market actually backs the currency. I mean, it's a circular circular event.
Computer creation of money to buy securities.
Right.
Okay. And
the securities back the currency.
Except Mope died, and it isn't happening.
It's certainly migrating.
Kill it. The short-term lending market killed it, and it's still there, and it's still in trouble.
Well, and Jim, how do you mope the fact that a third of all household debt is impaired in some manner?
You don't when they stop your credit card. You don't when the thing goes boom when trying to buy groceries. I'd say that reality will descend unless you do a credit card jubilee, which is most unlikely.
Jimmy, slowly but surely the everyday investor is beginning to understand the situation with the value of the dollar, whether it's my brother, whether it's the senior citizen living on interest rates and bonds. I've always tried to pay attention to herd mentality. Jim, it seems to me that the herd senses that the lions are surrounding them and about to attack. I've got people who never considered anything but CDs. I mean, simply straight CDs and savings accounts, let alone stocks and bonds. And now they're asking me about gold positions. Any thoughts about what that circumstance means, Jim?
Well, I think that, people have a feeling for what's going on. They can't understand what they see taking place. They wonder whether or not they're going to protect the local village with an armed militia of volunteers because nobody's going to pay for the police. They're uncomfortable. In New York City, they don't go out at night at all. Very close to where I'm talking to you now is a very dangerous place to be. I had a little confrontation with the power company, and they called the police. So the state troopers came here, and I got along pretty good with the guy. But I said, if you can't control Portland, how are you going to control me? I'm in the right. And he said, you don't prove. He said, see all the stuff around my waist? If I touch any of this, who do you think is going to jail? Not you, me. We are in a serious situation which is not going to change. Just God help us if these maniacs that spend trillions and now say that modern economics says the deficits mean nothing, all of a sudden find out the deficits mean a lot. They mean everything, especially when they are supporting NIT. So that feeling people get. You don't have to transport. It's like the Bush telegraph in Africa. It's faster than internet. People are starting to feel that everything's out of whack and want to get back into something that just quietly sits there and appreciates. It's common sense. It's starting to happen, and now you've got one of the most famous investors in the world who has publicly said, by the action of his investment fund, that he'd prefer to have groceries and gold than lending institutions and banks. It's all changed, guys, and even the market's changed. This is the break. This is the bull market that will not end.
Jim, there's a good lesson there that we need to talk about. We always talk about be prepared, the motto of the Boy Scouts. And here you are, power goes out, and whether you're John Q. Public or just somebody in the neighborhood who had the foresight to put in a generator, everybody knows you got power and they don't got power. Yeah. And whether they think you're a noise violation or if it's just raw jealousy, you stuck out like a sore thumb, didn't you?
I got told to turn it off. I said something very unkind, not to the police, but I show respect to anybody in uniform, not necessarily to my neighbors. And no, I wouldn't turn it off because and they said, well, you're putting power down the line. You're going to kill some people who come and repair things.
Nah, there's safety switches.
I said, call a generator company, and I'll show you two fail safes that prevent any power from going out on and I'm not turning it off. The disrespect for people and all that kind of stuff. I said,
Well, way to go, Jim. So, Bill, this week I said everything that could have gone wrong
Denny,
went wrong. Yeah, Bill.
Before you, I just want to mention with Jim's situation, you said all of his neighbors know that he has power and they don't.
Right.
When I lived in Costa Rica, probably every 3 weeks, I would go out on a Saturday or a Sunday, out away from the house and backyard, and I'd fire maybe 25 to 50 rounds, shoot at milk cartons or whatever.
You were sending a message.
Exactly. I did it at the quietest time of the day, and the way Costa Rica is laid out, the Central Valley is like a big bowl. And, I mean, you can hear the shots fired on the other side, which is 20 miles away.
I can just hear the Costa Rican say, El gringo loco.
Crazy gringo. Exactamente. Yep.
Yeah, they would. But
with
the
big
point
black
is
dogs.
but the thing is, they weren't going to mess with you. They'd go someplace else for easier pickings.
Easier pickings, exactly.
I mean, I decided to feed venison. I wanted nice to have the deer come around just in case I needed them sometime in the future. So I got a feeding station and all that. What do you think I got? I got the local bear.
Ooh.
Okay.
Bear's good too. There's more work to just process it though.
Oh, it's good to eat, but it's a little bit different than Bambi.
All right, so Bill, I've been saving this question for you. I told you everything went wrong. The freezer went out this week. The sump pump and the downspout drain got clogged up, and it took me forever to clear it. 2 of the 10-year-old fans in the greenhouse quit working, and then one of the solar arrays kept tripping a 40-amp breaker. In short, Bill, anything that could have gone south and been screwed up, it went out. And yet now they're all fixed. And all but one of them by me because I just couldn't diagnose it on the freezer. Bill, I got to thinking, what's it going to be like when we have high inflation, we have material shortages? How in the world are folks going to get things fixed? Bill, this is not an economy that is going to be vibrant and robust. It's going to be really constricted in so many ways.
You're going to have to part things out is what's going to happen. It's going to be difficult to get parts. You'll certainly be able to, if you have contacts, you'll certainly be able to get labor, the know-how and the ability to get it done, but it's the parts. And as an example, one of my 2 wells, the pump went out this week. And when we first moved in, I had one of the wells completely redone. I've redone. Looking forward, that there's gonna be a time where you're not gonna be able to get parts. So I retrofitted the older well. The newer well, the power box with the capacitor and all in it, that fried. Had it all replaced, and I said I wanted another box.
It's called a pump controller. I know what you mean. Okay.
Yeah. So if it happens in the future and I can't get one, I got one.
I got a different kind of problem. You know my dog Angel, okay?
The big one.
Yeah, she comes from along the line of junkyard garden dogs, not terribly refined. She got the plumber, she got the carpenter, okay? She got the mason, she got the electrician.
You mean she bit them all?
Bit them all. And, you know, that gets very costly because you got to buy your way out, otherwise you'll lose your guard dog. But now I have a hard time getting anybody to come to my house, leave alone the fact that the whole monetary system and social order is going upside down.
Well, Jim, Angel's a great judge of character. She loves me.
She does. Absolutely. You guys, I mean, if I was in a bar fight, I want her and you. That's it. We win against the entire place.
Now, wait a minute. The first time I saw Angel, she was licking her bottom. So, Bill, that doesn't say much about you.
Oh.
Hey, David, speaking of...
That one hurt, Danny.
Yeah, that one hurt.
Mean lady I got, okay? It's a mean lady.
David, speaking of social unrest and the like, there are cities in the Northwest that have seen demonstrations and riots every night for over 60 days, 2 straight months, Dave. I can't tell if it's grassroots or not. I can't tell if it's planned chaos. I can't tell if it's... Yeah, but what I can't tell is the extent of the destabilization of the infrastructure. All I know is that if I were a business owner in the midst of that, or, God help me, a homeowner, I'd be out of my mind trying to figure out whether to just pack it up in a Conestoga wagon and leave. Dave, you told me about that video for downtown Fifth Avenue. What are you thinking, David?
Well, I think what you're talking about is absolutely correct. Yes, everything is out of control. You know, how did we get here? We could argue about that for years. But the simple answer is I believe we've been led to this point by the people in charge or our owners who are in charge. Somebody's always in charge. You know, we talk about a pyramid. You know, at the top, there's always only one boss. Depends on how far down the layers of the system you are. Depends on where you are in this pyramid. But I don't believe in coincidences. I believe everything happens when it happens because it's the time that it's been appointed to happen. I believe what's happening now is happening because it is the time for it to happen. You know, the Creature from Jekyll Isle clearly broke out the stages of how all these things would, you know, the debt problem. Well, we've gone through the stages. You know, as I said before the call, you know, as we were talking about, yes, there's an excellent short 2-minute video on a Zero Hedge article that shows someone diving through downtown Manhattan, and everything's boarded up. Every window's been smashed. The buildings are all closed. I read an article today in the New York Times. Manhattan foot traffic, meaning pedestrians, people in the street, is down 82%. Wait a minute, think about that, 82%. That means there's almost nothing going on. The restaurants, the hotels, the stores, nothing is going on. And as I jokingly said to Bill during the week, you know, but the stock market's at all-time high. Well, and again, it's a giant information operation. They know they can distract the public by just saying, oh, the stock market's back. Just watch your 401k. Don't worry. The man behind the curtain, just like in The Wizard of Oz, is controlling all the levers. There's no news coverage of what's going on in real world. You know,
there's no news coverage at all.
Well, every night we get the opposite of what's causing this.
So obviously, in my opinion, what's taking place now is because we're at that stage of the plan that this is what is supposed to happen. And when I say this is what's supposed to happen, because this is all leading us into the reset. They have the public so divided, so scared. They have no clue what's going on. You know, we have incidences taking place internationally that are way too numerous to get into right now. But again, they're getting scant coverage because we're just overwhelmed with our personal situation here in the country. Everything happens on the time that it's supposed to happen, be it the Oklahoma City bombing, be it 9/11, be it whatever event you want it to be. These events happen because our owners are causing them to happen. You know, again, Jackson Hole predicted the financial crisis in the sense that they already had the bailout ready to go for the repo market when it occurred. So, again, I don't want to get too much into this here, but every event that's taken place since then has been planned. You know, everything that takes place is planned. So to answer your question, Denny, these things are happening. Yes, there is unbelievable as you're talking about, but as I said before we got on the call, my only question is why did it take 20 years? Because 20 years ago I thought we were ready for this. I don't want to say unfortunately. Unfortunately, though, we got led down the path further and further with each bailout of Wall Street, one crash after another, and now this is where it's led to, and they're going to have to pull a rabbit out of the hat, and there is no more bunny ears coming out of this hat. So I think you're more likely going to pull a Wolverine out of the hat than a bunny rabbit.
And, Denny, these riots are absolutely funded. And all you'd have to do is follow the money. And I've said that about COMEX, too. Just pull up a time and sales and see where all the sales came from. And boom, you got your answer as to who's behind it. And why don't we get that? Because it's government sanctioned.
Well, and again, I said this about the pallets of bricks that were showing up all over the place.
Right.
Obviously, those pallets are showing up. They came from a supply house. You just don't make those in your backyard, and Hamas snuck them out there. I mean, they were.
And Dave, they've got cameras all over the place. You could get license plates of the trucks that deliver them.
Exactly. Every cop's got a license plate reader. I mean, you know, this stuff's
right.
all in a giant fusion computer. So, you know, the fact that it's occurring because it's time to occur, and they're going to allow it to occur because they want it to occur. The only thing that we could try and do is educate people to the fact that it is occurring and take what steps necessary to try and, as I said to my buddy who was here earlier today, who's in his 70s, the only thing you could really try and do is help your friends, help yourself, because personally, do I think I'm changing anything that's in the game plan? You got to be kidding. I'm like a speck on an elephant's butt, even smaller. I'm not changing anything, maybe a couple of people's minds here once in a while, but, you know, I'm not going to institute change. Who even cares what I say? You know, I'm a nobody. So that's my thing. I try to explain.
We care, Dave.
Yeah, don't let him say that, David. We're coming for you.
Well, you get
when they take you away, we'll come and get you.
Right. You know, you get my point, though. You know, none of us are really going to nothing any of us could do are going to change the plans that have been put in place.
Nothing.
We are getting in the way of the reset, and if you tried to, you'd get run over by it. It'd be like standing in front of a bulldozer. All we could try and do is give a little perspective to the listeners, and hopefully they take a couple small steps each week, month, or day that will allow them to have less pain as the situation unfolds. Best way to put it. I can.
All right, we got about 10, 12, 15 minutes left. Jim, I'm going to go to you with this next question, but Dave and Bill, feel free to jump in. Jim, I was trained as an accountant for the family, and fixed overhead costs that can't be cut is one of the major concerns of any small business or any medium-sized business. You got your rent, you got utilities, you've got insurance, property taxes, and those are usually based on your total sales and are priced into your sales numbers. But what's happened in the last 125 days, small business is not at 100%. Many of them are maybe at 30 to 50%. Some might be at 70%. But those fixed overhead costs are not flexible. And that nut still has to be cracked no matter what your sales are. My fear is, and I'm beginning to see it now, where people are not paying their rent, In many cases, they're 60 days out on their utilities. But the fact is being totally ignored by economists, politicians, and the press. There can't be a V-shaped or U-shaped recovery if we can't get even our fixed costs, our fixed overhead costs covered. And that's where we are right now.
It's the beginning of an event that's going to take us into 2032. It's a major long-term economic reset in various steps. There's no fix. We've all learned that very carefully in Bill's articles. And there's no argument with a word you've said, Bill, and we don't hear the normal argumentation, okay? Because there isn't any way to counter the fact of the matter. So what's behind us is behind us. It's history. Don't look back. Something new is coming. It's not going to be comfortable in the change. Well, let's help deal with the change by learning how to live less, be more responsible, take care of ourselves, and don't decide to go to see the Christmas tree in New York this year at Rockefeller Center.
Dave, Bill, you want to add anything on that one? All right.
Dave?
So
I think what Jim said is absolutely 100% correct. I mean, it is a new world directly in front of us, and anything that you did or learned in the past it's not going to help you, because it's going to be an entirely new world. And the only thing that will help you is your common sense, your common sense about right and wrong, and your gut feel as to how to navigate.
Here's where things begin to stink up in the stew, and Dave, you can jump in. The question is, can American families survive financially without this massive unemployment benefit that they're getting, whether it's $600 or $400 a week, and with now Trump's talking about removing payroll withholding taxes altogether? I don't think that we can maintain enough spending to save the businesses to make their hard costs, what we call the fixed overhead costs. I don't see anybody's cash flow resuming to a point where this economy can continue. That's where I'm watching.
And that takes the banking system down, because who lent the money for all this stuff to be built?
And the excuse is a pandemic.
Yeah, a pandemic. Go ahead, David.
Well, again, David, why you're saying, you know why? Because it just does not work. As you're saying, there can't be a V-shaped recovery. If foot traffic in Manhattan is down 82%, I don't care what business you own, you're out of business. So, ultimately what Jim's talking about via the reset, there's the damage that has already been done will force that to happen. Because, again, you can't function in a restaurant with 82% of your foot traffic down. You can't have a Saks Fifth Ave. You can't
be a hot dog vendor.
Right. You can't be how do you be a landlord? Who owns all these buildings? And I can answer this, but again, I don't want to get, the bailouts are really trying to save the big players, not the little one. Because what good is cutting payroll tax for somebody who doesn't have to? Explain to me how that puts money. There's 30 million people on unemployment, correct? In one way, shape, or form, give or take, correct?
Yes,
More.
Sir.
Okay, but I think it's 50 million.
Well, let's just say it's a third of the workforce. So
right.
If you give a benefit to people who are working via a payroll tax cut, that means the people who are in the gutter already are getting absolutely zero benefit, because
right.
A payroll tax cut when you don't have a payroll equals zero. Am I correct?
Yeah, you bet, buddy.
So 30% of the country, or 300 million, or 30 million, 50 million people, are going to see no economic stimulus to go out and eat dinner, or to go out and spend money, or to go out to the mall, or go to the movies. So no, obviously what we're talking about, Denny, this is carved in stone. The only thing that the government's going to try and do is, as Jim said, both parties are going to trip over themselves trying to pass out enough money to make it through the election. And after that, you're still going to have a collapse. So, you can rob from Peter to pay Paul only for so long. It doesn't matter whether you're a country, a company, or a person. That theory never goes away, does it?
Never.
And Dave,
Never.
You can go one step further with that. And I guess this kind of goes back to the last thing we were talking about, the future, not looking back in the past. In the past, what was the no-brainer way to make money? You just buy real estate and you'll borrow as much as you possibly can because real estate always goes up. That was the saying, and of course that was proven incorrect in 2008, 9, 10. But my point here is going one step further. Is real estate, other than your house, which keeps you dry and warm in the wintertime and a place to live, other than your house, is real estate an asset or is it a liability?
It depends on if it's paid for. Farmland would be an asset. If you're talking about having to maintain heating and cooling systems.
No. I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. When I'm talking about real estate, I'm talking about the cities that are emptying out.
You're non-earning.
And that's where the big money is in the cities. All of those buildings were built with debt. Nobody paid cash to build, a 50-story skyscraper.
No way.
It was all done on debt. And my point being is the no-brainer way to make money is now a death trap liability.
I hated being a landlord, Bill. Calls in the middle of the night when it was retail, if it was, homes and duplexes and whatnot. But the ones on the commercial side, I hated being a landlord, and I cannot imagine in this environment where people aren't paying rent as part of their fixed asset or fixed, costs because they can't. And I'm standing out here, I'm renting the building, and I'm screwed. I am so glad I'm out of the real estate business.
How about the landlord in Connecticut that went to his tenant and said, you're late on the rent, you got to pay me. The guy cut his head off with a samurai sword. Did you see that?
I didn't see that one.
He didn't know his head was off for 3 seconds.
He cut his rent in half. He cut his rent in half.
All right, so here's the last question of the day. And, David, I'm going to send it to you first, but I want you to be very, very careful, okay? I read this week that the stay-at-home orders, the mask mandates, the no public events dogma is a test of sorts to see just how much the American people will put up with before they riot. David, tell me what you're thinking, and I don't go off the deep end, but tell me is this just a test of what the American people will put up with?
Absolutely is. This is, again, everything that happens in this country is a test. How about the Boston bombing, Danny? They went door to door without a search warrant for a 17-year-old kid who weighed 130 pounds. Door to door, every single house they wanted to, and just stormed in. This is definitely a test run. Again, the U.S. media barely covered it. They talked about, there's 10,000 people in Germany rioting over the mask. The number was over 1 million.
Yes.
Over 1 million. And again, you don't see that coverage here in our press. The last thing they want us to do is to stand up and say, you can take this mask in, and I won't say it, but the point being, I have good friends. Obviously, I'm a little well-versed in the industry of masks, PPE. A very good friend of mine is a major in the military, and we had a discussion about masks. And his name's Dave also. I said, Dave, until they develop a standard for what a mask is and what it's supposed to do, you're hard-pressed ever to get me to put one on. Because let's use an N95 as an example with an exhaust port. They keep telling me, every article that I read, that I'm not wearing the mask to protect myself. I'm wearing it to protect others from me, and it's a show of compliance. Well, that N95 mask with an exhaust port does nothing for filtration of the aerosols that I'm exhaling. So telling me to put on a mask actually isn't even accomplishing what you want, let alone the mask that you're telling me that I'm wearing. 90% of people are pulling bandanas up over their face that have no particle blocking of aerosols one way or the other. If it's not a test, then I'm just watching the world be completely stupid for no reason, because I get up, I'm an early morning riser, and I'm watching people going out exercising at 6 o'clock in the morning with a mask on, walking their dog by themselves with a mask on, taking a walk by themselves with a mask on.
It's a muzzle, Dave.
Well, it's idiocy.
It's a muzzle.
It's idiocy. It's just, it's
the
complete insanity.
N95 is a perfect mask because it works so well. You died inhaling your own CO2.
So again, this obviously is, if they didn't set it up to use it as a test of our compliance, then they're by random using it as a test of our compliance. But no matter how you put it, that's what it is. They are testing to see the boiling point of the American population. And a good friend of mine who was an oral surgeon, we happened to be at the beach, and I ran into him, we were joking, and he said, masks have become almost a symbol of who you are and what you believe.
Exactly.
Well, it's sheep will wear a mask, and I'm not even getting into politics. People's belief system. You have to convince me the merits of putting on a mask without a standard of filtration, without a number of hours it could be worn, without how it has to be handled when you take it off, how it has to be cleaned or disposed of. There's no standards. There's no health and safety professionals doing anything. It's a stupid recommendation by your state governors to cover your mouth and face. How about and again, there's no standard. I could hang a piece of dish towel over my face, and that's a mask. No, it's not a mask. It's a dish towel over my face. So it's a bandana over my face. It's not a mask. Again, Or
John McAfee.
Well, John McAfee was pretty funny because I had proposed that early on that I was going to do something along those lines and have a T-shirt printed that explained why I was doing it. But again, it's insanity. There's no standard. Everything in the real world has a standard. Whether you're in an operating room wearing a mask, whether you're in a confined space wearing a mask, whether you're dealing with chemicals wearing a mask, there's a standard, and then there's a mask for that standard. We have no standards. We just have mass herding of the population, and that's what's really scary to me.
You did good with that one, David. You did good with that one.
It's
well,
nice
boys,
David.
That's all I've got. Jimmy, you got anything else you want to share?
No, actually not. This has been educational for me. This is, as I kidded, we are sort of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, but we're the good ones. Okay, we're the guys out front warning. What is it? 1 by land, 2 by sea. They must have called him a nut too. We're trying to present problems and solutions, and sometimes I learn more by listening to my friends than I do by opening my mouth. This happened to be one of the times.
Well, that's awful kind of you. We feel the same way listening to you. Billy Boy, what you got?
I would just go back to what we spoke about earlier, as far as you talked about all kinds of things broke this week.
Golly, they broke.
I would suggest that people have maintenance done on anything and everything that could break. I mean, the winter season's coming up. Make sure if you're running it on oil, make sure you're topped off. Get your furnace checked. If you're in the South, we're already in the summertime, so if your air conditioner was going to break, it would break. But the point being, if you need tires for your car, if you need an oil change in 1,000 miles from now, do it now, because there's no telling what you will or will not be able to do or what you will or will not be able to get to repair things in the future. So I would use relative calm and relative supply of goods to do what you need to do. That's all I got.
David, you're the last one this week. Anything else you want to share?
Not at all, Denny. Let's wrap it up and hope for a little more sanity next week, but unfortunately, that's not coming. So
good luck with that, Dave.
Right. Good luck with that.
We'll see how that works out. Well, there's no other place we would rather be, the four of us, on Saturday afternoon than with each other to share some things with you. We're not know-it-alls, but we've been beat up, had our asses kicked, and we've had some tough times in life, and we are trying to share a perspective of what could happen. Please pay attention. We don't make a whole lot of money from this. In fact, I don't think we make any money from this. I was just going to say, what money? We're doing it out of our love for mankind and the good United States of America. So with that, we'll leave you alone, and we will reach out to you once again next Saturday right here on this JS Mindset podcast. You all take care and have a great week.